Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
And I'm Stephanie.
We continue with our literature unit for the month of September, and our featured work of literature is the novel Black Beauty. It's about a horse that has a pretty good life at the beginning. It doesn't have such a good life in the middle of the story, but then it has a happy ending in the end.
It does. As we usually do in our literature units, we're going to spend the last unit or the last episode here talking about the author, some of the messages that the author was trying to communicate through her novel, and maybe some things we can take away from it as well. Because when we read, we can always leave that novel with some things that help our own personal lives. Hopefully we learn some things. I think there's some great messages in Black Beauty. Right now, we're going to listen to this being read through one time, and then we'll be back. Black Beauty, a compassionate voice for animals. Black Beauty, penned by Anna Sewell, has been a classic in children's literature since its publication in 1877. At the age of 14, Sewell sustained injuries to both her ankles without receiving proper medical care. Consequently, she relied on crutches and could not stand for long periods. This limited mobility led her to depend on horse-drawn carriages, deepening her affection for horses and concern for their well-being. Although Black Beauty is primarily regarded as a children's novel, Sewell wrote it for those who work with horses. Her goal was to foster kindness, sympathy, and awareness toward horses. The novel employs anthropomorphism through Beauty's first-person perspective. His story, along with the experiences of other horses, shows that animals can feel both suffering and joy. Their emotions change based on how they are treated. This narrative shifted public perceptions toward animal welfare. Sewell criticized harmful practices in Victorian England, such as check reins, blinkers, and tail docking. These long-standing customs highlighted the social acceptance of animal cruelty during that era. Her vivid depiction sparked public sympathy and anger, which led to early animal protection efforts around the world. Moreover, Black Beauty explores how kindness impacts both animals and people. Ginger, once abused, finds comfort and healing in friendship at Birtwick Park. Similarly, despite his hardships, Beauty never loses his sense of gratitude. Ultimately, it is this thankful heart and the goodness of those he encounters that lead him to a place of peace. Through Beauty's calm and thoughtful voice, Sewell reminds us to treat all beings with empathy and respect. More than a story, Black Beauty is a lasting voice for those who have none.
Welcome back, everybody. It's time for us to talk about today's lesson. It's the final part of our literature unit for the month of September. Again, it's the story of Black Beauty. It's a compassionate voice, or it has a compassionate voice for animals. And, of course, the message of this book is to tell us to be nice to animals, to treat them kindly. And, of course, this does not only apply to horses, but it could apply to stray dogs and stray cats or whatever. So, indeed, that's the message of this book. And maybe you should read it and start to be nice to your dog instead of beating it all the time.
Oh, that's bad.
I'm just kidding there, of course.
Okay.
I'm sure most people don't do that. But, yes, indeed, this is a story of Black Beauty, who started off pretty well, being owned by a really nice master. And then, of course, he was owned by a cruel one, somebody who loved face. And then later, he worked as a cab horse in London and was treated cruelly there. But finally, he was bought at an auction by a compassionate farmer who sold him to a nice family. And then Black Beauty lived out his days in comfort and peace. But today we're going to focus more specifically on the author herself, Anna Sewell.
Yeah, Tom and I were talking about how to pronounce this lady's last name. Sewell is a name that you mostly see in the UK, so you don't often run into people who have this name in America. I knew someone, one person, one family, and they pronounced it Sewell, but here in the UK, they like to say Sewell, 2 syllables, or Sewell, just 1 syllable. So you can say it the way you choose. We're choosing to go with Sewell. And this book, it says, was penned by Anna Sewell. If you pen a novel, it just is another fancy way to say write. Or sometimes authors will have something called a pen name. A pen name is a different name from their own that they use to publish books. Maybe they want to remain anonymous. They don't want other people to know that they've written something, so they'll use a pen name. I know one author who uses several pen names depending on what kind of literature she writes. Sometimes she's writing a romance novel. Sometimes she's writing about real issues. So she uses another name because she feels like she's more of a reporter. But you can choose a pen name if you'd like and use that rather than your own. Well, it was penned by this Anna Sewell, and it's been a classic in children's literature since its publication in 1877. This book has been around a long time. I was looking online to see how many times it's been made into a movie or TV series, many times. But the two most famous are the first one in 1946 with which was really famous. And then also in 1994, it was a more current version, I would say. It was all British actors, which I think is appropriate because Black Beauty was an English horse.
Okay, and of course, this book was published way back in 1877, so it's been around for quite some time. Publication just refers to when something is published, so it had its publication in 1877, or you could say it was published in 1877. In other words, it was released as a book. You could buy it and you could read it, or they probably serialized it in newspapers like they used to do back then. You could read a section of it in the newspaper, and over several weeks, you could actually read the whole novel. Now, at the age of 14, Sewell sustained injuries to both her ankles without receiving proper medical care. So, for some reason, she had an accident when she was 14 years old, but the doctor wasn't available or they didn't have the money or whatever, so she did not receive proper medical care, and as a result, she had some injuries throughout her life.
Notice here we're using the verb to sustain an injury or sustain injury. We use it quite often. It just means you're getting hurt or injured. You experience an injury, you suffer an injury, you endure an injury. We use it to talk about, for example, he sustained a leg injury, or the car sustained damage in the accident. And here's another one for sports. The team sustained a loss in the championship. I think it's interesting because usually when we think about sustain, it means you're upholding or supporting someone as they do a job. Sometimes we use it that way too. But here, sustained an injury just means she was injured. And like Tom said, sadly, she did not get the proper medical care she needed, and it had lasting consequences. So what's the next word? Consequently. Consequently means as a result of something else, or so this happened. So because of this awful injury she had when she was 14, she had to then rely on crutches and could not stand for long periods. So this really had a horrible effect on the rest of her life. Crutches are those sticks that help a person walk when one of their legs or ankles are injured. They are very uncomfortable to use. I had to use them once and I thought, I think I'd rather just not go anywhere because they start to really hurt underneath your arm because you're leaning on them so much. Have you had to walk with crutches before, Tom?
Not really. I used walking sticks or hiking poles when I had some problems with my knee a while back. And a lot of elderly people will use a cane, which is a pole that you hold with your hand that helps you balance yourself when you're trying to walk. But if you've broken your leg or something like that, you will use crutches. They probably will go on both sides of your body, underneath your armpits. And as you said, they can be quite painful to use if you're not used to them. So here she had to rely on crutches in order to walk because she had injured her ankles. So she could not stand for long periods. She had to sit down and take the weight off her ankles.
Yeah. Wow, that's a tough thing to go through. So limited mobility. Limited means you don't have an extensive range, right? So mobility is the ability to move around. So she wasn't able to move around like she had been. And this led her to really depend on horse-drawn carriages. Remember, she's living back in the 1800s. So they didn't have cars then. So she had to depend on these horse-drawn carriages. And that led her to really have a deep affection for horses. And she was always concerned for their well-being. Well-being just means their health and happiness. She wanted those horses to be taken care of properly, and she wanted them to have an enjoyable life and not be treated harshly or poorly or cruelly by their masters. And their master would be the coachman who was driving the carriage. But, how they were treated in their stables mattered as well. How they were being fed and brushed down. You always have to brush the horse down after he's been working all day. Cool him down, make sure he has what he needs so he can rest at night. So she was very concerned about horses starting at a pretty young age.
Okay, here in the next paragraph it says, although Black Beauty is primarily regarded as a children's novel, Sewell wrote it for those who work with horses. Okay, so it's mainly supposed to be a novel for children. So although this is true, she still wrote it for those people who actually work with horses. Maybe as a reminder to treat them kindly and not be so mean to them, because if you are cruel to those animals, they'll probably have a shorter lifespan and your investment in them will be kind of worthless. So you should treat them well so that they work for you. Horses aren't bored, or they don't get bored. Well, they will get bored if you don't put them to work. So I'm sure horses want to do something, but don't overwork them and don't be cruel to them. That was the message of her book.
Right. So she wrote it especially for those who work with horses. It just happens to be a really great children's novel. I really enjoyed it. I read it when I was, I think, in junior high. Yeah, junior high. So it was a while ago. Now, her goal was to foster kindness, sympathy, and awareness toward horses. If you foster something, you help it develop or help it to grow. So she was trying to help those that work with horses feel more kindness towards them. Sympathy, of course, is that understanding, that compassion that people feel for others' trouble. So feeling sorry for someone else's misfortunes or their hardships would be showing sympathy. And awareness, just being aware or alert to how horses are feeling. If horses are unhappy, they kind of have a way of showing you. I was telling Tom before we started that a horse's tail is their way of expressing a lot of emotion. So watch for the horse's tail, learn more about what those horses and their tails are trying to communicate to you if you're around horses.
Or dogs or cats to a certain extent. And I also noticed that pigs will wag their tails if they're happy.
Oh, really?
But in this particular case, we're talking about being kind to horses, to foster kindness, to foster sympathy toward horses. Sympathy just means you feel the way they do. You feel pity or sorrow for their misfortune. And yes, indeed, you need to be sympathetic to horses. And of course, you need to be aware of what horses are going through. And the novel employs anthropomorphism through Beauty's first-person perspective. Now, here's a magic word here, anthropomorphism. Okay, anthro just means having to do with people, and then morphism just means changing the shape of something to transform the shape of something. So basically, this means that the horse is actually acting like a person, okay? The horse is actually thinking, it's actually talking, and this happens a lot in cartoons, for example, like Bugs Bunny is an anthropomorphized rabbit because he actually talks and thinks like a human being, even though he is a rabbit.
But they make you believe he's like a person. Now, if you're writing in the first person as a writer or an author, it means your main character is using I. I did this. I felt that. He is my friend. If it's in the third person, it's more where you're using someone's name. Beauty felt sad, or Beauty went to stay in the stable. But if it's first person again, it would, I felt sad. I went to sleep in the stable. So this is how the author has decided to write her novel, by employing this technique where Beauty is almost like a person and is writing from a first-person perspective. Your perspective is your viewpoint, the way you are thinking, your outlook, your own angle. From his perspective, he probably thought his life had been really wonderful at the beginning. Then he went through some tough times, or as we say, hardships. And then he got to finish up his life with some great people. That was probably Beauty's perspective on his own life.
Right. And of course, he had his buddies as well, so they probably talked to each other. How do you feel today? Oh, I'm terrible. My legs are killing me after pulling those carriages around London all day long. So yes, indeed, he got to know other horses and learn their stories and their experiences. And of course, this shows us that animals can feel both suffering and joy. Of course, horses can't really talk, but this kind of tells us that they probably do have feelings themselves, and they probably feel sad if you overwork them, or they feel happy if you're kind to them.
Yeah, I love to watch horses with their owners who really love them. They'll come up and they'll want to be petted. They'll want to have that apple. A lot of times the owner will put apples in his pocket or her pocket and feed it to the horse. And you can see that they do have real feelings and emotions, and that they're drawn to people who treat them well. I know I was bucked off a horse, which means the horse throws the rider off. When I was in high school, I went with my friends. It was a high school event, and I was bucked off. And I think the reason is that the horse could sense I didn't know what I was doing. And if they sense that the rider is unsure, sometimes the horse will try to get rid of you. And that's what happened to me. So they do understand the horse or the human's feelings as they're riding the horse as well. So you want to be calm and respectful of the horse, treat them well, and they will return that, I think, is to those that understand horses, at least according to my experience.
Yep, and that's why we say their emotions change based on how they are treated.
Yeah.
So again, if you treat the horse with kindness, it will be a nice horse. If you're mean to it, it will probably try to buck you off.
Or if you're nervous, like I was, it'll buck you off too.
Yeah, I only rode a horse once in my life, and I didn't think I wanted to do it again because I could tell the horse did not really want me on top of him, and I thought, I don't want to put these horses through that. If they don't want me on there, then I don't want to be on them either.
Yeah, I was on a rental horse, and they're not always treated well because they have to deal with a lot of people like me who don't know what they're doing. I did love the horse. I wasn't mean.
Okay, that brings us to the midway point in our lesson for today. Let's take a break and listen now to our Chinese teacher.
听众朋友大家好，我是安娜。我们前2天带大家看黑神驹这个故事。其实黑神驹这个故事啊，它本来是一个儿童文学的经典之作啦。它什么时候出版呢？是1877年就出版嘞。作者是 Anna Schwell。好，我们来看一下第一段的第一句。这个儿童文学的经典啊，经典这个字啊，英文叫做 classic， 一个经典之作 a classic。那 classic 也有经典的这个形容词的意思。我们就常会跟另外一个形容词搞混啊，另外一个形容词叫做 classical， 就是 classic 再加上 al。那 classical 指的是古典的，它是相对于现代来说，我们最常讲的就是古典音乐 classical music。那 classic 呢，则是经典。什么叫做经典？就是所有的人事物当中啊，很具有代表性的，那就是一个 classic 哦，很具有代表性的那个。比如说书，经典之作，很具有代表性的一个笑话，很具有代表性的一个事件。那为什么 Anna Schwell 会做了这个故事呢？因为原来在她14岁的时候啊，她因为双脚脚踝都受伤，然后没有得到一些适当的医疗照顾，就要拿拐杖行走，而且行动的限制呢，就让她依赖马车代步。马车哦，当时哦，19世纪哦，这个很正常的，好不好？那在这种情况之下呢，就加深了他对马的感情，还有关照到马的福祉。所以第一段其实最重要就是第4句这个地方。我们先把第4句中间逗点之后的 deepening 这个地方把它抓出来。其实它是一个关系子句的简化哦。什么关系子句呢？我们还原，逗点之后本来应该是 which deepened， 这件事情加深了他的 affection， 还有他的 concern 呢，对马匹的爱还有关心关怀。但是要特别注意一下，逗点之后的 which 这种补充说明非限定用法的关系子句啊，有时候会拿来代替 逗点前面的整句话哦。所以如果你觉得先行词是逗点前面的 carriage 马车，这样文意好像就怪怪的，对不对？其实which代替的是逗点前面 this limited mobility 这个限制的行动啊，然后因为它常常必须要靠马车代步啊，逗点which就加深了他对于马的 affection 感情，还有 well-being 还有福祉，所以他就写了这一本书。好，我们来到第二段哦。虽然呢，黑神驹是视为一个就是所谓儿童文学的经典，但是其实啊，它是写给那一些跟马匹一起工作的人哦。第二段的第一句最后面的 those who 是我们常说的那些什么什么的人，对不对？其实它是限定用法关系子句 those who work with horses， 那些谁呢？就是跟马一起工作的人。那主要的目标就是希望啊，能够培养大家对于马的善意，还有这个同情，还有一些理解。所以这个小说呢，就是用了一个拟人化的手法，而且是第一人称视角哦。我们来看一下第二段第三句，第一人称视角真的是叫做 first person， 第一人称。那 perspective 呢，是一种观点，一种角度的意思。所以在我这个故事当中，我们会看到黑神驹会说我怎么样，我怎么样。那当我怎么样的时候，读者读到那个文字，自己心中的这个默念也会说我怎么样，我怎么样。所以他其实用第一人称视角的话，会能够让读者感受到马匹的快乐跟痛苦，还有他们的一种被对待的这样子的方式。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, guys. We're on day 3 of our literature unit, and we're talking about the author of Black Beauty, Anna Sewell. And we also talked about how this has been a classic in children's literature since it was first published back in 1877, in the 1800s or 19th century, you could say. So we found out the author herself had experienced some injuries to her ankles that really were quite severe. And so I think she had to, because she had to rely on horse-drawn carriages to get around and had a lot of time to be around horses, she really came to have a lot of affection for them, and she was concerned that other people treated horses well. She wanted horses to feel like they were loved and well cared for by whoever they were working for. You know, some horses do different types of work. Some horses are field horses, and they help farmers plant crops. Some horses are show horses, so their whole job in life is to look beautiful and to win awards for rich people who own them. Other horses are race horses, and you run around a horse track trying to beat other horses in speed. And then there are horses like Beauty, who spent their life pulling carriages and working hard.
Indeed. So, of course, because of this story, people became more aware of how animals were being treated. Maybe people before thought, they're just animals. Who cares? We can beat them. It's okay. They don't feel anything. They don't have a soul or anything like that. But this narrative, this story of being sensitive to horses shifted public perceptions toward animal welfare. Okay, so we have this narrative, we have this story that people read, and they started to think differently about the welfare or the well-being of animals. Perception, of course, is just how you see things. Before that, people didn't really care. They're just animals. Who cares? But now they saw that these animals have feelings, that they can actually talk to each other, at least in this novel. So they thought, hey, maybe we should treat animals better.
Perception is one of our vocabulary words, and it means how you think about something, how you understand it. A lot of times your perception about a situation or a person can change once you understand the person better, or maybe hear both sides of a story. Maybe there's an argument, and your perception is that one person is at fault or wrong, and then you discover you were wrong. You didn't know all of the facts. So she wanted those perceptions to change toward animal welfare, treating them better. She criticized harmful practices in Victorian England, like check reins. We talked about the bearing reins. Check reins, they're the same things. Blinkers are those covers they put on the sides of horses' eyes so that they can only see straight ahead. And then tail docking is when they would cut their tails. Sometimes their tails would interfere with harness equipment. They'd get caught in the carriage, and they wanted to make that easier for the coachmen or the drivers. But sometimes their tails were cut to make them higher because they would affect a nerve in their tails. But horses can get rid of flies with their tails, and they also express emotions with their tails. So that practice of tail docking is now illegal in most civilized countries.
Yeah, like dogs, they wagged their tails when they were happy, and these long-standing customs highlighted the social acceptance of animal cruelty during that era. So if something's long-standing, it's been around for a long time, and most people accepted the fact that you could be cruel to animals. Who cares? They're just animals. And that happened, of course, during that time of history, during Victorian England, and her vivid depiction sparked public sympathy and anger, which led to early animal protection efforts around the world. So she has this depiction of this horse and his life. Depiction, of course, is how you portray something, how you describe something. So, of course, the way she told the story told people, or at least to encourage them to have this sort of public debate. Yeah, maybe we're being too mean to animals, and this didn't happen just in England, but all over the world.
Yeah, Victorian England, of course, was during Queen Victoria's reign, 1837 to 1901. It was a long period of time. It says here she had a very vivid depiction that sparked public sympathy and anger. If something's vivid, it's very colorful, it's bright, it's clear, it captures your attention, and it accomplished her goal. She wanted people to think about horses, and that led to early animal protection efforts around the world. During this period of time, tail docking, or cutting their tails shorter and lifting them up higher, was something that was common. But after this book, there were people who tried to outlaw, and now it's illegal to tail dock.
Okay, here in the next paragraph it says, moreover, or in addition, Black Beauty explores how kindness impacts both animals and people. So it shows us that it's basically good to be kind to animals and to be kind to people while you're at it. And Ginger, for example, once abused when she was treated cruelly, finds comfort and healing in friendship at Birtwick Park. So we see that as an example. Ginger was once treated badly, but now she's being treated kindly. She finds comfort and healing. She feels better, and maybe she can forget about those scars from her past life.
Yeah, so Beauty, despite having the hardships he went through, he never loses his sense of gratitude. He's always grateful, thankful for things that went well in his life ultimately. It is the thankful heart and the goodness of those he encounters that lead him to a place of peace. If you encounter someone, you run into them, you didn't have it planned, it just happened. So you can meet someone, face something unexpectedly, that's encounter. So he ran into some really good people as well as some bad people.
And here in the final paragraph it says, through Beauty's calm and thoughtful voice, Sewell reminds us to treat all beings with empathy and respect. So the voice of Black Beauty in the story is calm and thoughtful. If you're thoughtful, you are considerate. You take other people into consideration. You don't just forget about them. He's a very sensitive horse here. So we're all reminded that, hey, we need to treat everybody, including animals, with empathy and respect. Empathy is similar to sympathy. You're just trying to put yourself in their place. And more than a story, Black Beauty is a lasting voice for those who have none. So yes, think about all the people or animals that are suffering out there right now, and maybe you might do something about it so that we'll all maybe get good karma from that or something like that. Okay, we're at the end of our discussion for today. Here comes our Chinese teacher.
所以大家就读了小说之后啊，发现这个故事啊，真的有改变大家对于动物福利的看法耶。来到第3段，我们看到这个动物的福利啊，我们大家本来就是觉得动物就动物嘛，但是现在整个 perception 整个感官呢都改变了。其实啊，他当时也批评了维多利亚时代英国一些很有害的做法，比如说马要尾巴剪掉啦，戴眼罩啦，控制缰绳啊。我们特别把第2句的做法 practice 这个字抓出来，还有第3句的 customs 这个习俗。好， 我们先复习一下，如果我们说风俗习惯，在英文当中常会说 customs and traditions， customs and traditions。 那风俗习惯就是在社会当中的一群人在某个时间点通常都会有哪些做法嘛？例如我们中秋节要烤肉啦，吃团圆饭啦，这是我们的 customs and traditions。 但是这也是一种大家会一起来做的一件事情，所以第二句这个 practice 啊，如果学英文到了一个程度，例如说高中英文之后，你的字汇量到4-5千之后， practice 它再也不只有这个练习的意思，而是大家会去做的一些事情。像当时就是会对动物有这种虐待的这种情况，所以它的生动描述就激起大家的同情啊，还有愤怒。好，当然第3段第4句我们看到逗点汇取这边，那你不用想太多，这边的汇取它真的是逗点前面这个先行词啊 public sympathy and anger。 好，那先行词真的就是逗点前面的这4个字。好，那除此之外，黑神居啊其实也探讨了一些慈悲啊、善良，还有就是所谓的这个 kindness， 其实会影响到人跟动物啦。例如说遭受虐待的 Ginger， 他其实也在这个 Berwick Park 里面呢，经由友谊的关系就找到一些 comfort 还有疗愈。当然这边有个关系子句的简化，在第4段第2句 Ginger 后面逗点的 once abused， 我们先把它插入 Who is once abused， 这整个故事拟人化嘛，我们逗点之后用 Who is once abused， 他曾经一度被虐待，他又找到慰藉。然后但是很重要的是，这个黑神居虽然他也有遇到很糟糕的状况啊，被超工时啊，被虐待啊，但是他一直有抱怀着一种感恩之心。第4段第3句最后面这个 gratitude 我们要特别抓出来，而重要的就是因为懂得感恩，所以最后才会有这个福报啊，到最后才能找到平静的归宿。第4段第4句这个地方有一个分裂句强调句哦，我们把逗点之后的 it 抓出来， it is 跟后面的 that 这3个字我们全部把它框起来，所以中间呢是一个强调，就是因为这种感恩的心跟善良，最后面 that 才能够导致他能够找到一个平静的归宿。所以这是黑神居，如果大家有空的时候不妨欣赏看看哦。我是安娜，我们下次见。
We sure hope you enjoyed this literature unit and you get a chance to pick up a copy of Black Beauty. I don't think you will regret it. And we also hope you can check out our YouTube page and our Facebook page. You can pick up some more English tips that way while you're waiting for the next program. For English Digest, I'm Stephanie.
I'm Tom. Goodbye.
Bye.